G'day, I'm Tethersis, and this is the War on Tether. Today I want to talk about willful ignorance. That's going to sound a little harsh, and it's also a little harsh for me to pick apart every part of a video that I disagree with. In the interest of giving due credit to a man who's become hugely successful in the crypto YouTube realm, let me just say, Crypto Lark is a wonderfully positive and infectious character, the eternal optimist who bathes his loyal subscribers in a warm glow of reassurance. And whilst I can't speak for all his videos, his Tether analysis was well researched and entertaining. Having said that, I'm confused by such positive conclusions that are drawn about very disturbing information. So without further ado, let's get into the video.
Well, it wouldn't be a bull run without some good old-fashioned Tether FUD. Now, Tether, in case you don't know, is the USDT stablecoin whose value is pegged to the dollar and which is supposed to be backed one for one by dollars. Now, for many years, all sorts of drama has surrounded the biggest stablecoin in the market, with many people saying that it's going to collapse, it's a scam, it's a fraud, it's going to take Bitcoin down with it. This came up again recently regarding an investigation which is currently being carried out by the New York Attorney General looking into the allegations of fraud, investigating Tether. So in this video, I will discuss the Tether FUD and whether you should be worried that this is going to bring Bitcoin down.
In my experience, the acronym FUD, which is popular in crypto, fear, uncertainty and doubt, is used in a dismissive way when addressing anything that may be of concern for crypto. But there's nothing overly worrying in the introduction. Pay attention, however, to this next clip, as Lark acknowledges Tether as an annoyance in crypto, but quickly dismisses and even ridicules Tether's potential impact on Bitcoin.
Okay, so Tether, man, you know, it's just this thorn in the side for the crypto industry. But the FUD circulating right now needs to be brought down because it's getting a little bit silly, people calling for the collapse of the crypto markets because of Tether. Far too many people are out there saying that Bitcoin's gonna go, just super bear market, gonna go back to just incredibly low levels. The new bear market is here, $42,000 at the top, it's all over.
But to his credit, Mr. Lark takes a pretty deep dive into Tether's nefarious past.
Well, Tether has a pretty long history of doing all sorts of shady crap. Those audits never happened, and it eventually got to the point of literally a guy who talked to a guy who said that he saw the Tether bank accounts. That actually happened. The management team of Tether and the management team of the Bitfinex exchange were one and the same. 2019, when Tether's lawyers finally had to admit that Tether, due to banking issues with some of their banking partners, was at best 74% backed, because the New York Attorney General had started an investigation in early 2019 into allegations of fraud and market manipulation around Tether. Then Bitfinex, they came out, they sold like $1 billion worth of some shitcoin that they made up in order to raise funds to make up for the missing 26% of the dollars, which were supposed to be backing the stablecoin.
Now, does this look like the body language of a man who has supreme confidence in the largest cryptocurrency in the world by trade volume? Well, he answers that himself.
Look, I can't say whether or not Tether has committed fraud. Certainly, I would not be surprised. In fact, I'm leaning towards probably.
And this is where the video turns into the willful ignorance I referred to earlier on. Mr. Lark appears to understand the immediate impact of a Tether collapse, and yet wildly speculates why it might even be good for Bitcoin long term. However, unlike his deep dive into Tether's past, there appears to be little to no research or evidence that accompanies such a positive long-term outlook.
What does all of this mean for Bitcoin and for the markets if Tether is found guilty, if they're found, guilty of everything, right? Of the manipulation and the fraud and the pumping the market and all that stuff, right? Well, some say that Bitcoin will crash because the only reason the price has gone so high is that Tether pumped the price higher. I partially disagree with that.
You can't really partially disagree with that. Either Tether printed unbacked Tether and used it to buy Bitcoin, which would drive up the price, or they didn't. Surely you're not suggesting that they did use unbacked Tether to buy Bitcoin but it had no effect on the price. I mean, that's completely ignoring the demand side of the economic equation.
Now, a catastrophic Tether collapse would have an immediate, dramatic, and negative impact. There's no sugarcoating over that reality.
And yet I get the feeling you're going to try.
But a dramatic, immediate Tether collapse may not be the most likely scenario. You see, it's demand that pumped the price of Bitcoin higher, not just, fake Tether being issued in the market, if that is, of course, what's actually happening.
Okay, look, for starters, that is 100% what's happening. And secondly, how does true demand for Bitcoin make Tether's collapse not likely to happen?
Yes, of course, there's correlation between the price going higher and the increased supply of Tether. But Tether is only a part of the entire mix when it comes to crypto market demand. It is far from being the only stable coin on the market these days, although Tether, of course, is still the stable coin of choice for many of the big exchanges.
Okay, so it's true. Tether is only a part of crypto, but it is the single biggest part of crypto by trade volume. Bigger than Bitcoin. I think a lot of people don't realise that. And the other stablecoins are barely worth mentioning in comparison. Now in this next clip we see Lark having a little trouble deciding whether or not large whales use Tether.
Remember too, you got to keep this in mind. Grayscale, the New York Digital Investment Group, Paul Tudor Jones, Skybridge, Ruffer, all these guys, they're not buying Bitcoin with USDT. They're entering with cold, hard cash. Tether is mostly being purchased by exchanges and by mega whales.
It seems a little inconsistent to me. Also, it is possible that the exchanges purchased Tether because they're the only stablecoin that can be purchased with crypto assets. Why else would exchanges choose Tether knowing full well they are exposing their customers to a product that is not as advertised? Although I will admit to this being only speculation on my part. Moving on.
But the claims that since the supply of Tether expanded and thus the price of Bitcoin went up means that it can only be a scam is, I don't think, totally true. In fact, I think it's kind of BS.
I don't think totally true. Kinda BS. It's the same as when before he said, I don't totally agree that Tether was used to pump the Bitcoin price. To me, this sort of non-committal language is an indication that Lark's subconscious is not prepared to agree with his conscious conclusions. You saw the montage of his Tether background. To then come to such a crypto-positive conclusion, well, it's no wonder that his subconscious won't allow him to use confident language.
But here's the thing. Even if Tether is found guilty of fraud, that would not necessarily mean that Tether would be forced to shut down. If that was the case, then there would be no banks left in the world, since every single major commercial bank has been convicted of so many financial crimes, including fraud, multiple times. They just pay fines and move on.
If you think that Tether, having been convicted of fraud, would just pay a fine and move on, you are, as we say in Australia, off your dick. Banks have something Tether doesn't. It's called political reach. Now in this next clip we'll take a look at how Lark minimises the impact of the downfall of Tether, the world's largest traded cryptocurrency.
But let's say that some highly unlikely but extreme kind of scenario plays out whereby the management of Tether is, they're all arrested, the accounts of Tether are seized and frozen. Well, that would be a bad thing. Without a doubt, that would likely result in a very dramatic drop for all crypto assets very, very quickly. Then we would see the whales and the institutions, and they would step in and they would gobble up the Bitcoin and just
All right, settle down, Cookie Monster.
And of course, a Tether collapse does not change the fundamentals of Bitcoin. In fact, it has nothing to do with the fundamentals of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's Bitcoin, right? Tether's something else.
I would argue that Tether has changed the fundamentals of Bitcoin. Bitcoin was created, at least in part, to escape the lunacy of a financial system which not only allows, but relies on fractional reserve banking. The introduction of a fractional reserve in crypto, which is used to manipulate Bitcoin's price, is a divergence from one of the reasons Bitcoin was created. meaning it has fundamentally changed. Lark moves on to discuss other stablecoins and has a self-proclaimed tinfoil hat moment, which seemed far less logical than, yep, Tether committed fraud. He concludes with a less than convincing argument where he again speculates, this time about how long it might take for Tether to be found guilty of fraud.
Anyway, final thoughts. Don't believe the FUD. Don't react too dramatically to the market. The January 15th deadline that came and went and so many people were scared of was only the day when Tether needed to submit the millions of documents. How long is it going to take the New York Attorney General Office to go through millions of pages of documents? How many people do they have looking at this stuff, right? The investigation will likely keep going on for a long time. It could be years more. And regardless of the outcome, whether Tether collapses or not, the market's going to be just fine without Tether. To be honest, it's probably going to be better without Tether. The crypto market, it's trying to not live in the shadows anymore, and Tether is a creature of the shadows, born in the shadows, right?
And now for my final thoughts. The market price of Tether reflects a mass acceptance of their fractional reserve methods by the crypto economy. There are even some that convince themselves that Tether is now issued legitimately. To those people I say this: go out and get a puppy. Now, the first time that puppy pisses all over your carpet, don't speak to him sternly and send him outside. Just turn around, don't look, and pretend it didn't happen. Now, pretty soon you're going to have a giant mongrel pissing all over your house. Tether is a mongrel pissing all over the house of crypto, and it's time he got sent outside. I'm Tethersis, and this has been the War on Tether.